And I'd like to start with my question to Adam Lupel, which is, Adam, actually, why do you think are local and national levels of particular importance at a time when the international order is unraveling? Of course, in regard also to the general thematic of our panel. Adam.
Excellent, thank you, Laurent. And then you can all rest, but I hope I don't put you to sleep. Yes, I'm going to talk a bit more, as you say, on the more general thematic topic of the session and the conference. But on narrative, I'll say this to start: the world is divided, and we are living the extreme consequences of that division, or that is the narrative that we are hearing repeatedly. And like all meta-narratives, it contains a kernel of truth, but it's not the whole story. And I'm going to come back to that thought at the end. There is no avoiding it, though, and we've been just talking about hearing some of this in the plenary session. The state of international peace and security is dire. And it is not just the most recent tragedies unfolding in Israel-Palestine, or Ukraine, or Sudan, or Haiti, and others mentioned there. According to the Uppsala data program, the number, intensity, and length of conflicts worldwide is at its highest level since before the end of the Cold War. And the international system of collective security, in particular the system centered on the UN Security Council, would seem unable to respond with adequate measures, no fault of the Swiss seat on the Council. It is a very dangerous time. And so the broadest question of this session, how to overcome violence, is a difficult one. The causes of violence in our time are many and complex. The UN Secretary General's new agenda for peace, which everybody, I work at the International Peace Institute of New York, and everybody in New York is very focused on the new agenda for peace and the upcoming Summit of the Future. The new agenda for peace identifies trust, solidarity, and universality as the core principles of an effective collective security system that could help respond to these many challenges that we face. And yet we know, this was talked about at the plenary, trust is at an all-time low among governments, between governments and international organizations, and between governments and their people. International solidarity was profoundly damaged by the inequality of the pandemic response, and universality has been undermined for years by double standards on all sides, from Iraq to Gaza and beyond. If we want to build international trust and solidarity, universality is the key. There is no trust or solidarity if international rules are applied selectively based upon geopolitical interest and military power rather than universally according to the law. At the core of violent conflict today lies a general decay in universal commitments to international law, and particularly normative constraints on the use of force, both on when and how it is used, putting civilians in particular at increased risk. And this generates a vicious cycle where violence only begets more violence. If we want to rebuild our capacity for collective security and overcome the spread of violent conflict, we must demand consistency in the application of international norms. Easier said than done. Trust is easy to break, but it is very difficult to rebuild. How do we begin? We are in a moment of geopolitical transformation, and during this time, the stitches of global order will be stretched, tested, and many times they will fray. They are fraying as we speak. So we must be realistic. International trust and solidarity will not be rebuilt snap of our fingers as much as we'd like. We must build from the bottom up and from the inside out. The new agenda for peace places national action at the center. National governments have the primary responsibility to sustain peace within their borders, and decades of experience has shown that international interventions are powerless to build peace without the leadership of local and national partners. You asked me about the connection between the local, national, and international. And this is not an agenda restricted to only the least developed or conflict-affected countries. All states, low, middle, and high income, have work to do and must commit to build national prevention strategies, and this is beginning to happen. Just last month, for example, Norway, Kenya, and Timor-Leste each presented their strategies to the UN Peacebuilding Commission. But what should these strategies entail? If consistency is the key to rebuilding trust, comprehensiveness is the key to building peace. This is not a new insight, as it is fully in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, but I take it as potentially transformative, the recognition in the new Agenda for Peace that the cause of peace entails a commitment to the eradication of all forms of violence, including, if not especially, gender-based violence. And the President of Ethiopia spoke specifically about this eloquently. And this comprehensiveness to address all forms of violence means that as the promotion of international peace and security requires action at the national level, effective national action requires engagement and inclusion at the local level. As the seams of global order are coming undone, it is local level peace builders that are keeping the stitches from unraveling completely. Recently at IPI, we had a visit from a group of women peace builders from Ukraine, and it was truly striking to me how different their concerns were from the top level messages you hear from Kyiv, Washington, or Berlin. As the necessary debates continue about what military support is needed to defend Ukraine against Russian aggression, the local level peace builders are discussing psychosocial support, care for the wounded and displaced, the orphaned, employment, intercommunal dialogue, all those challenging social issues that will have to be dealt with when rebuilding begins. And this is why women and local civil society must be part of any peace process anywhere. Because without them, what you get is a negotiation and a competition about power among men with guns rather than a whole of society plan for sustaining peace over time. And we know that including women in peace process increases the chances of success, and this is backed up by the data, has been noted many times. So to conclude, let's come back to the narrative question that I started with. I dare to say that the world is not as divided as it would appear to be, as the dominant narrative suggests. I recently had the honor of moderating 2 ambassadorial level discussions on global governance and the role of small states like Switzerland in advance of September's Summit of the Future in New York. And when you convene small and medium-sized states around discussions of multilateralism, one finds a tremendous amount of agreement among a broad cross-regional group around the values of international cooperation. We're at the International Cooperation Forum. When you compare national level action plans for conflict prevention, and when you talk to local level peace builders, you find a tremendous amount of agreement around the need for these whole of society comprehensive approaches. If we want to overcome violence and division, we must keep those basic areas of common understanding in mind as all stakeholders work to seize the upcoming opportunities to build a more peaceful, secure, and sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.